My mission is simple, to help you protect your family and keep more of your money. I'm here to help level the playing field for families and those who seek the truth. There's always a new way to make money, but at the end of the day, it's your family's security and your legacy that matter. And I promise to help you protect what's really important to you. Legacy Money starts now. Hey guys, welcome to Legacy Money. I'm your host, Barry Page, the show that shares the truth about money and how it really works, so you can live more, give more, and learn more. My goal as host is to educate, inform, to inspire and motivate, and to share the truth about money. God gave us the ability to think on our own, and so I encourage you to think about how you save, how you plan, and why you do what you do. Today, we're back in the office studio, and I'm speaking with my guest, John Webster. John, say hello to everybody.
Hey, everybody. Great to be on here with you, Barry.
Thank you for being with us again. We had such a good response to our last show that John and I have been speaking about doing something a little different, something new. So we'll be sharing that with you in upcoming shows. But today, we just want to dive a little deeper into the infinite banking concept and actually analyze what's really going on. So this is a very interesting topic, I find. And, you know, especially during this pandemic, I like to call it, and all the virtual meetings, suddenly there's just a multitude of experts out there. And unfortunately, many of these so-called experts are talking and telling people how they can use the infinite banking concept. And so what I want you to know and understand is that anything that we say and discuss about infinite banking came straight from the source, Nelson Nash, the Nelson Nash Institute, or the Infinite Banking Think Tank. So you can always relate back to the source. Nelson wrote this book, Becoming Your Own Banker. And I encourage you, if you want to practice infinite banking, if you want to experience financial freedom and financial independence, to get that book, read it, and reread it. I just spoke with a client earlier this morning, and these are the kind of clients that you like to have, people that are eager to seek knowledge, to seek wisdom. And he's read this book. He's also read The Case for IBC, How Privatized Banking Really Works. But he asked me, what do you recommend I read next? So I love it when people are eager to learn. And so I just encourage you to always go to the source. If you have questions, certainly you can ask us. But you know, if it has to do with infinite banking, if you're researching the topic, then you can always also go to infinitebanking.org and the Nelson Nash Institute to have access to this knowledge. So don't just take our word for it. Go to the source, do your own research, and the source, again, is the book, Becoming Your Own Banker, and of course, the author, the creator of the concept, Nelson Nash.
Yep.
Now, before we get started, I want to remind you to subscribe to Legacy Money. I do appreciate that. And please leave your comments and your questions in the comment section below. We'll be glad to answer those in future episodes. I just recently did a question and answer episode, so you can feel free to ask your questions and leave your comments. So, John, welcome to the show. Let's get started with some of the things. Maybe what kind of questions did maybe you get, or what did you get from our last episode? If we just wanted to touch on a variety of subjects today, you know, focusing on infinite banking and control. But what kind of comments or questions maybe have you gotten from our last conversation?
You know, I think one of the things that comes about is acquisition of money, cost of acquisition, and just getting a firm understanding of what does having access to capital do. If money's so cheap out there in the marketplace right now, why would I want to be the bank? They aren't making much money, are they?
Well,
And
it's funny. It's funny you say that. I was just looking at some bank stocks earlier this morning. But yeah, obviously there's a cost for banks too. So what are some of the costs that are associated with getting capital?
well, for one, that takes time to get capital if you're going to outside lenders. Time costs money, right?
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's not just one person that has to source time to get that. It may be multiple people in the office that have to spend time to put everything together to prove out what's needed documentation wise to get access to lending from a traditional bank. So what's the time value? What is the cost of that time?
Well, that's I think it's funny. I just was having some work done on our office here, and the contractor, and usually this is the kind of contractors typically understand that, right? Time is money. Matter of fact, I hear it, but this particular guy was wanting. He interrupted me when he first came by, but I told him, I was like, the reason I'm even talking to you is because you came by to see me. You actually asked for my business. I said, but you interrupted me, so I can't talk today. But if you want to come by and give me an estimate, then we probably can have that work done. So anyway, time is money, and there is a cost associated with that time. So what else is associated with the cost of acquisition, John? Nelson talks about that in the book. What else is associated with that?
Well, sometimes it's the delay of not getting that capital quick enough, right? Sometimes not having access to that capital quick enough can cost you opportunities, right?
Right.
Nelson always said, if you have an accumulation of wealth, opportunities will seek you out, right?
Woo! Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works.
He talked a lot about the big plot of timberland that played out for him multiple times, that opportunities sought him out because of the position he had with capital, right?
Right. That's such a good point. And in our business, we speak a lot about lost opportunity costs. So not only do you miss out on the opportunity, I mean, how many times have people said, oh, if I'd have just bought that stock then, or if I'd have just invested then, I'd be a millionaire today, or things like that. You hear that all the time. But not only that, if you don't, you're not only missing out on that investment or that opportunity, but you're missing out on that for the rest of your life, what it could do, what it could grow to, and the cost associated with maybe not doing it, right?
Right.
The lost opportunity cost.
Yeah, we oftentimes talk about opportunity cost as a loss because of how we spend our money, but there's also lost opportunity because our money wasn't available, or we didn't have capital available to spend when the right opportunity comes by. That's what I always refer to it as flat forehead syndrome.
Right.
It's like, if I would have had the money to buy that 20 acres out at the edge of town that now is that big development, that big resort, right?
Right. Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Do you feel like people try to use infinite banking too quick? Is that something that you run into?
I think that sometimes they do. They'll try to use it before they've got enough reserves built up, before they've fully capitalized their system. And at times that can put them into a difficult situation.
Exactly. It's, in other words, they're leveraged already. Maybe they have debt or something of that nature that they're trying to pay off, and then they leverage their policy, because they've learned infinite banking, or maybe somebody has taught them how to stretch that limit. And like you said, they wind up in a worse situation than to begin with. And I'm very cautious of that whenever I'm working with clients, just to help them understand that there is a capitalization phase, as Nelson always put it. So, it takes time. So, but, what are some examples of how people could use it other than debt?
Well, there's great investment opportunities come in cycles, right? And we saw capital from traditional lenders completely dry up in the Great Recession. And those that had accumulated capital, those that had built banking policies, had access to capital. Opportunities were abundant and great opportunities. I mean, where you could buy real estate for, less than 25 cents on the dollar, sometimes 10 cents on the dollar, that was gonna reappreciate. And now we can look at history, and we always say, hindsight's 2020. Everyone right now looks and says, boy, if I could have bought up a bunch of houses in 09, 10, 11, 12, boy, look at where that real estate has gone to now, right?
Right.
And access to capital. That's what provided opportunity.
Absolutely. And I shared the example. It wasn't a client of mine, but a colleague of mine down here on the Gulf Coast. I'm on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and this was actually in Louisiana. Right after Hurricane Katrina.
Wow.
Now we got another hurricane, I think the third this season, coming right at us. But after Hurricane Katrina, this particular person had lost their job. They had their house was severely damaged, yet they still had a mortgage payment, and they they had bills to pay. Is really the bottom line. And so they didn't have a job, but what they did have was access to capital, what we're talking about, right? So I always kind of relate it to emergencies and opportunities, right? So those are ways that we can utilize our policies, infinite banking, that we will need access to capital. We will need cash flow. And so oftentimes what happens is people end up borrowing more money from the financial institutions when those things arise, because they don't have an emergency fund. So once your system is capitalized, you can certainly use it for that. But back to this example, so this particular person went out right after Hurricane Katrina, and they bought a stump grinder, right? Now you might be saying, what in the world? Why would you want to buy a stump grinder when you don't have a job, you don't have income to pay your bills, your expenses? And they turned that stump grinder into a business, right? Yeah. And so they borrowed from their policy, and they bought that stump grinder. Now, do you think they were pretty busy after Hurricane Katrina grinding stumps?
They were really, really busy.
Yeah, lots of trees down, right?
Yep.
And so that turned into an opportunity for them, and they were able to access their policy, their contract, to borrow money, and then they paid themselves back. They were an honest banker. So that, I think, is the trap that people sometimes fall into when they don't, when they over leverage themselves. They don't wait to fully capitalize the system, and they borrow all the money that's available, and then they're not an honest banker. right? They don't pay themselves back. So you spoke on that, and again, Nelson makes a grocery store example in the book, just so people can relate to that. But and you've talked about real estate and business, but what are some other examples that you know of that you've dealt with as far as utilizing access to the capital?
Well, I want to go back to your example for a second, and that's that a lot of people may have completely missed, but you said your client didn't have a job. They lost their job. So
Right.
if they had walked into the bank and asked that banker for a loan because they wanted to buy some equipment, what's the first question the banker is going to ask them? Oh, what's your income? What's your job?
Yep.
I don't have a job.
Yeah.
And
Income.
immediately that loan application would get denied, right?
Yep.
So access to capital that doesn't get denied when your loan request goes in, that's pretty important.
Yeah. And, just all the typical credit scoring and ways that hoops you have to jump through to borrow money from the bank, right? So if you don't have a job, you don't have income, the bank's not going to loan you money, right?
Right.
And if you don't have collateral, in other words, your money's not parked at their bank working for them, they're probably not going to, loan you the money.
Yeah.
And then of course there's credit scoring. So, you have to put all that in there into that cost of acquisition, the time, filling out the applications, getting denied, waiting on answers. What about the hired help? If somebody were going to start a bank, what do you need? If you're going to start a business, a bank, or of any type, what do you need to make it profitable?
Well, a traditional bank, they've typically got a building, they've got
Rent.
capital, they've got to wait and pay for licensing and a banking charter, showing that they've got a bunch of capital, and then they've got to hire a bunch of employees, provide those employees with benefits, and then they got to open their doors and hope that they can bring in account holders who will trust them and give them money, right? Traditional banking.
Yep. So there's a cost, and you got to hire people, right? You got to have manpower.
Yep.
Hired help, Nelson used to call it. So even in this scenario, all of those things have to be in place, right? The difference is those things are already taken care of. The companies we work with have track records. They've been around. They've been in business, most of them for well over a century, over 100 years. As a matter of fact, life insurance companies that we're talking about here, they're one of the few businesses that are looking way down the road, right? When you talk to a small business owner, how far are they looking down the road typically?
Well, most small business owners are looking down the road about 1 to 2 years, sometimes 5.
How about next month payroll? Yeah. I mean, how am I going to make payroll this month, right?
They're hoping to pay the bills next month. They may be looking a little further down, but they're just hoping to collect enough money,
right?
Pay their bills, pay their employees.
So cash flow is important, and it's but a year, 5 years down the road, that's what most big business corporations, they're making predictions. They're looking a year, 5 years down the road. But on the other hand, life insurance companies, they're looking a century. They're looking mortality. They're looking 100 years down the road, right?
Yep.
So that's why it's a little more predictable. That's why those actuaries get paid the big bucks, right? Because they've crunched these numbers, and it's based on mortality. So, well, that's good. Talking about business and examples, let's talk about the news a little bit, John. I was just looking. The markets seem to be at all-time highs again. Just last week, though, the news media after the debate, they were saying, hey, the market's going to tank. And Where do you see the market going? Is that of importance?
It is of importance, although our clients sleep a little better at night, being much more protected from the risks of the market, not being exposed to the common market losses. But it's very important because many people out there, the bulk of their assets, the bulk of their retirement plan, the bulk of their future planning is tied to a market that rides a little bit like a roller coaster. And I heard the debate last week where they were critical of Donald Trump's beat up economy, and I looked and I told my wife, I said, it's kind of interesting. People should be a little bit concerned about the market, but his beat up economy in the midst of the worst pandemic we've seen is still twice as high as the best market of the previous 8 years that we saw. So is that concerning? Yes. If the markets are twice as high as the best we've seen in the previous, in all past history, there's always significant risk that the markets will come down, right?
Right.
We've seen a lot of volatility, a lot of fear. The president went to the hospital and the markets fell, right? It's concerning.
Yes. The concern that I really have, John, whenever I speak to people, families, business owners for the first time, is that I find the bulk of their saving is vested in the market. So yeah. What does that mean? Well, typically it's in a government qualified plan, meaning an IRA, 401k, or the like. And so that what that means is that it's locked up. They don't have what we were just talking about, access to the capital.
No.
So that's what's concerning to me, is that, this money is locked up for 20, 30, 40 years in some cases. Mm-hmm. And so while it may be growing, hopefully, right, they could lose it. It's at risk, but they don't have access to the capital. And so they don't have access to maybe these opportunities that we were discussing, yep. Business opportunities, even things, emergencies. So that is a concern. Speaking about the news and money, I read this morning, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said that the Fed efforts are far from complete.
Far from complete.
What does that mean to you?
Boy, it means that they've got a lot more planned. And, it goes back to your discussion of the qualified plans, right?
Right.
Qualified plans, I call them government partnership plans. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never had any partnership with the government that was truly enjoyable. How about, does a 401k that could ride the roller coaster to become a 201k, does that give you a sense of control?
Not really.
What
scares me to death?
What did Nelson talk about with regard to control in our finance?
Well, that's really, man, I love that. Nelson said that when it comes to our finances, that control is the single most important thing that we can do over our lifetime. So in other words, being able to control that asset, and it really means everything. If we have access to the asset, can we use it? Can we utilize that asset? And in this case, we're talking about infinite banking and having access to our capital. So control is everything. And so when you're talking about finances, in the words of Nelson Nash, it's the most important thing that we can do.
Yeah.
It really is everything. And just kind of on that note, Bank Notes is the title for the Nelson Nash Institute blog. And so if you're wanting to keep up with financial issues, I'd recommend you read that. And if you'd like to get a copy of that, perhaps subscribe, then just reach out to John or I, and we can get you a copy of that. But, kind of back on the news topics. Right now, obviously, with this COVID and vaccine and the election, there's a lot in the news about that. And so in this current issue, what made me think about this is that Robert Kennedy Jr., they speak of him and his vaccine findings. In other words, what he has found out. He's become a whistleblower, really, and he did some research on the World Health Organization, Dr. Fauci, Bill Gates, and the Rockefeller Foundation, which are really, all of those are arch nemesis. These are the opposite of what we teach, because all of those organizations want control. They want control of our lives. They want control of our money. And just recently, Bill Gates and his foundation have steered over $250 million to all of the major news outlets. That's the BBC, NPR, NBC, Al Jazeera, and the New York Times. So if you look at a lot of the negative press that has come out, you mentioned after the debate and towards our current president, all speaking negatively about the economy and what he's done. Most of that comes from one of these media resources. Mm-hmm. And so it's all about control. It's all about not only controlling our money supply through the Federal Reserve, but controlling our minds, the narrative of what we're thinking, when we turn on the news, what we see on a daily basis. So I encourage you to consider the source, whatever it may be. And again, when we're talking about infinite banking, this is the source. Yeah. Now, throughout this book, Nelson always, just about every chapter, there is scripture. Nelson was probably one of the wisest men that I ever knew, but really what I remember about him was that he was a faithful Christian man. And so throughout the book, he has sprinkled it with scripture. Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also reject you as my priest, because you have ignored the law of your God. I will also ignore your children. Yeah. And boy, I love that. And so again, consider the source, wherever you're getting your news, your information from. Yeah. What do these people believe, right? Yeah. I mean, what are they doing? Where are they getting their information from? A lot of these news outlets that I just shared with you, again, it's about the money that's being poured into them. And again, coming from some of these huge organizations that we put our trust in, but they're probably not the best source to do that. So
many are being taught and paid to think a certain way and to try to program the thinking. And, this scamdemic that's going around, it's a real disease, but if you follow the money, I think that you will find that it's all about power and control. It's globalized. It ties back to globalized banking. And, changing your thinking, what's that require?
It's really a paradigm shift. We've got to look at things differently. Nelson really, every time I saw Nelson, which was well over a dozen times, he always talked about thinking, right? And he loved to make examples. He had some great examples, and I encourage you, if you haven't watched Nelson Nash live or to speak, get his seminar. You can get it from the Nelson Nash Institute if you really want to hear some of his anecdotes and stories. But again, it's a paradigm shift. It's a different way of looking at things. So thinking is very important, and he encouraged us all to think on our own. And that's what I want to encourage you as listeners out there to do is do some thinking on your own, really examine why you're doing things, how you're doing it. And, is by investing in a certain stock. As a matter of fact, if you just looked at the majority of stocks out there that are probably in the mutual funds that you own inside your 401k, they're owned by companies that if you really had your choice, I don't believe you would adapt their ideology or you would even put your money with them. But unfortunately, many people are. I encourage you to just analyze your thinking. So
Nelson used to love to say you need to rethink your thinking, right?
Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah. And rethink who you're listening to. All the talking heads out there. Nelson always also talked about noise. There's so much noise out there. I mean, there's 24/7 news. I'm guilty. I love to turn on the news and just catch up on it because it seems like there's something happening, every time I do. But I don't know if it's all good news, right? Most of it's bad news, and so we encourage you to do your own research, to rethink your thinking for sure.
You bet.
So I think that's a kind of a good one to end on. John, do you have anything else that you wanted to add today?
I think the big thing that, and you hit on, was going back to the source of the knowledge. And that's why I think Barry and I are both so passionate about standing with those that are part of the Nelson Nash Institute, our authorized practitioners, because those are people who are going back to the source of Nelson Nash to gain knowledge, the source of knowledge. And I am confident in that because I know that the source of Nelson's knowledge, he was a voracious reader. He had a book list that was a mile long, right? And he read constantly, but all of the things that he read were foundationally following from the principles of one source of knowledge, right?
God's laws, he always talked about, not man's laws, right?
Yeah. God's laws are always right.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you, John, for being with us today and for sharing. I want to encourage all of you out there to do your own thinking and to do a little research. Again, this book, Becoming Your Own Banker, is really our resource for talking about infinite banking. But go to the Nelson Nash Institute, infinitebanking.org.
Yep.
And you'll find, if you're looking to do infinite banking, you'll find a practitioner list there. Find somebody that is a practitioner. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them for us. We'll be glad to answer them. And again, John and I are working on another project that we'll be sharing with you here real soon. So I hope you'll join us next time. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in the next episode. Have a great day.
You bet.